All right, guys, let's wait for a couple of more minutes and we will start then. You can open your Chrome browsers and be ready. We have already created our accounts on Postman, so be ready with that. Start shortly. అంటే నాకు అనిపించింది దొంగ దొంగ వచ్చిండేమో అనిపించింది నాకు. ఐ రియలీ డోంట్ నో. అంటే దిస్ ఇస్ టూ హ్యాపెన్. ఇట్లా అవ్వద్దు బేసిక్. అడ్డం పడిపోవడము అదంతా జరగడము ఏందో యాజ్ వెరీ సమ్మన్ అన్నట్టు అనిపించింది నాకు. టూ గుడ్ టు బిలీవ్. నేను ఇప్పుడు అదే రూమ్ లో క్లాస్ వచ్చింది. మీకే భయం అవుతుంటే నేను క్లాస్ చెప్పాలి, ఇంకో గంటన్నర చెప్పాలి ఇక్కడ కూర్చొని డౌట్లు క్లియర్ చేసుకుంటారు. అర్థం అర్థం అట్లా వాడడం బిల్డింగ్ మీద అవ్వడం చేస్తే నాకు ఎంతో దొంగ వచ్చిండు అనిపించింది. బట్ ఐమ్ రియలీ నాట్ షూర్. చూడాలి ఒక రోజు రాత్రి ఇక్కడ ఉంటే అర్థం అవుతుంది ఏమవుతుంది అని చెప్పి. ఒక రోజు నిద్ర ఒక ఇక్కడ బాగా ఫస్ట్ ఫ్లోర్ లో అప్పుడు అర్థం అవుతుంది దొంగ వచ్చిండేమో అని చెప్పి. కరెక్ట్ దొంగనే అనిపిస్తుంది. రియలీ నాట్ షూర్. సరే మళ్ళీ చేస్తాను. అమ్మాయి అన్నీ all right. So everyone open this URL I have sent you in the chat box. All right. So today we will start our API testing using Postman. I hope everyone has created your user accounts in Postman. You need not download any application. I have downloaded it on my laptop because I need to take lessons. So I have downloaded it. For you, it's not required. You can do it directly on your browser itself. So everyone must have opened your workspace, my workspace. Okay. So a brief introduction about your API testing. Or I have also sent your API testing notes, I believe. Did I send you the API testing notes? No. Let me share the API testing notes also. Hold on. You guys can take a pull. You will get your manual API testing notes. Take a pull. You will get your manual API testing notes. Right. So I believe everyone has taken a pull now. Okay. I believe every one of you have taken a pull. Did you guys get your notes? So under the manual testing folder, you should see 5 files. సాయి స్క్రీన్ మీద చేస్తూనే ఉన్నా చూస్తలేవా స్క్రీన్ ని చూడాలా కాస్త స్క్రీన్ కూడా చూడాలా అప్పుడప్పుడు మధ్యలో So did you guys get all the 5 files? Do you have all the 5 files with you? You click on get full and again your full button. So everyone, did all of you get your 5 files? In your manual testing folder, you should have 5 files. సాయి నాకు అర్థం కావట్లేదు నీ ట్రబుల్ ఏంటో ఇక్కడ నేను పైన గిట్ అని చెప్పాను ఇంత క్లియర్ గా నా స్క్రీన్ మీద చూపిస్తున్నా మనం ఎందులో ట్రై చేస్తున్నావు నాకైతే తెలియదు ఇది ఎందులో వస్తుంది చెప్పు నాకు నువ్వే చెప్పాలి ఇది ఎందులో వస్తుంది స్క్రీన్ ఎందులో వస్తుంది మరి రోజు ఇన్ని రోజులు నువ్వు అసలు ఎస్క్యూఎల్ క్వెరీస్ ఎట్లా పుల్ చేసుకుంటున్నావు అసలు నాకు అర్థం కాలే సరే ఫుల్ ఫస్ట్ ఏమంటున్నావు మన మాన్యువల్ టెస్టింగ్ నోట్స్ ఎట్లా తీసుకున్నావు డేటాబేస్ టెస్టింగ్ నోట్స్ ఎట్లా తీసుకున్నావు ఎస్క్యూఎల్ ఫైల్ ఎట్లా తీసుకున్నావు టెస్ట్ కేస్ టెంప్లెట్ ఎట్లా తీసుకున్నావు ఇన్ని రోజులు సరే ఎస్క్యూఎల్ అటెండ్ అవ్వకపోతే ఎస్క్యూఎల్ ఫైల్ ఒక్కటి రాదు నీకు మిగతా 3 ఫైల్స్ అయితే రావాలి కదా నీకు నువ్వు ఇప్పుడు కాదు చెప్పాల్సింది ఇది అర్థమవుతుందా ఇప్పుడు కాదు అసలు ఇవాళ నుంచి స్టార్ట్ చేసినా అని చెప్తే నువ్వు అసలు అనొద్దు బేసిక్ గా ఎందుకంటే నువ్వు అట్లా ఎప్పుడు పడితే అప్పుడు ఎట్లా స్టార్ట్ చేస్తావు ఇప్పుడు మళ్ళీ అన్నిసార్లు కాన్సెప్ట్ రిపీట్ అవుతుందా నీకు అవ్వదు కదా సరే ఇదంటే చాలా చిన్న కాన్సెప్ట్ కాబట్టి నేను చెప్పగలుగుతా నాట్ ఏ ప్రాబ్లం అప్పటికి నేను చాలా క్లియర్ గా చెప్తున్నా ఇక్కడ గిట్ ఫుల్ అని చెప్పి అని మళ్ళీ నువ్వు ప్లీజ్ అంటే నేను ఇంకేం చెప్పలేను నేను ఇక్కడ క్లియర్ గా చూపిస్తూనే ఉన్నాను నీకు గిట్ పుల్ మళ్ళీ పుల్ అని చెప్పి అని ఇంత క్లియర్ గా చెప్తున్నా ట్రై చేయి ఇంటెలిజెంట్ ట్రై చేయాలి ఇది రాదు ఎవరికి ఏది రాదు ట్రై చేయాలి కంగారేం పడదు ఎందుకు కంగారేం ఉంది మహా అంటే ఒక చిన్న ఫైల్ అంతే వస్తుంది ఎందుకు రాదు చెడిపోతుంది రాకుండా Okay, so I hope everyone has got all the 5 files in the manual testing folder. Okay, in the manual testing folder, I believe all of you have downloaded or taken a pull. Get all the 5 files. So that will have all the basic details about your API testing. So if I have to explain what an API is. Okay, API, think of API. API is not a tool or anything of such sort. You can simply imagine API like a piece of code. API is also some code. What is the use of API? What is the purpose of this code? The purpose of your API or this particular code is it will facilitate communication between 2 different applications. API simply, API means application programming interface. Okay, it will facilitate communication between 2 different applications. How will it facilitate communication between 2 applications? Let me show it to you practically. So when you open facebook.com, okay, let me close facebook.com and open this freshly again. You type facebook.com and after that you will say enter. So typing your facebook.com and hitting enter will qualify as request. Request is nothing but you are requesting the application to access something. You are requesting the Facebook server to access something. And what is it that you are trying to access? The Facebook opening landing page. You are requesting the server to access something. The server will process your request and it will give out something called as a response. And what is the response? The response here, it is nothing but your Facebook website. It gets opened. But again, if your request is incorrect, let's say I'll do something like this. Will it work? So it is taking some time to open it. See, the request is invalid. So that is why it says we cannot reach it. So since the request is invalid, you're not getting any response. So in a similar fashion,
This is all UI, but in API testing, you will not have any UI, to be honest. What is it that you are typing here? What do you call this as here? What do you call this as? Exactly. Exactly. What do you call this as here? Exactly. URL. You call this as a URL. So you type a URL, you hit enter here. You will be opening that particular URL. This is very simple here. But in case of your API testing, a similar URL will be available for you to do your API testing. To access the API also, you'll be getting a very similar URL. But you don't call that as a URL, you call it as an endpoint. You have what an endpoint is in your notes. A very small one-line description about your endpoint even in your notes. So in your API testing, you deal with endpoints. So let's try to draw some parallels between your database testing and API testing. What happens in both of them? Okay, let's try to understand what both of them are. Okay, let's try to understand the difference between both of them. So first one is your database testing. You'll use CRUD operations, CRUD, CRUD operations. So in your database testing, what do you do here? What operations, what keywords will you use for CRUD operations? Create or insert, basically. Okay. You will say create or login here. Okay. But in case of API testing, and in database testing, how are you doing your database testing? It's always important that you understand your database SQL query so that you can understand API testing very easily. Database testing, if you know it thoroughly, how you are doing your database testing, if you know this thoroughly, API testing is very easy for you. Okay, it's not that tough. That is why I always teach database first and API next. So if you want to do something with your database, what actions do you perform in your DB work? Let's say you want to insert something or create, retrieve, update, delete. You want to do CRUD operation. How will you do CRUD operations with your database? By doing what actions will you perform these actions? Will you perform these operations? Exactly, by using queries or by writing SQL commands. So you write your SQL command. Okay. These SQL commands will do the required operation for you. This is a create operation. This is a read operation. This is also a read operation. So all these SQL queries, each SQL query has got its own operation, has got its own performance. It does a particular action, each SQL query. Similarly, even in your API testing, you don't write any SQL queries, you don't write any code. Just like how you have this SQL query, if you want to select all the employees between 8 lakhs and 10 lakhs. Okay. Just like how you have this SQL query, similarly, I mean, if you want to retrieve someone whose salary is between 8 lakhs and 10 lakhs, you will write an SQL query simply like this. But in case of API testing, you don't have to do that. You will be given an endpoint. An endpoint is nothing but a URL. You will be given a URL. Okay, something like this, a URL, something like this. It will be given for you. And using that URL, you can perform these actions. You did not write any code. API testing, manual API testing does not involve any code. When you say about Postman login, I already told you yesterday Postman login. I already told you day before yesterday also. Did you not attend 2 classes? You didn't attend both the classes? Yes, Katale. Yes, Sanaddu. Did you attend or did you not attend? Did you, if you didn't attend, say you didn't attend. Yes, ante నాకు అర్థం కావట్లే. Attend అయ్యారని చెప్ప, attend అవ్వలేదని చెప్ప, నేను ఏమనుకోవాలి? Didn't attend. So best thing, hold on till the end of the session or look at the recordings. That's what I can tell you. And also, moreover, it's not any rocket science. Simple గా open Postman page. Type Postman in Google. Google లో Postman open చేయండి. Go click on about, sign up option ఉంటుంది, sign up అంతే, simple. అందులో there is nothing much for you to do. Postman about, click on this. You'll get sign up option, sign up, sign in option at the top of the screen. Okay, sign up, sign in. If you don't have an account, sign up. If you already have an account, sign in. That's it. As simple as that. So In your API testing, you need not write any code. API testing does not involve any code writing. Okay. If it is automation, that's a different thing. But manual API testing does not involve writing any code. You will be given an endpoint. Okay. Something like this, a URL. You will have to take this URL, paste it in Postman software, and then you will have to execute, do your API testing. And in your database testing, how is your data retrieved? I mean, after you execute your query, in which format will you get your answer? In which format will you get your answer after executing your SQL queries? Okay. Exactly. You'll be getting it in tabular format. In database testing, your answers will all be retrieved in tabular format. Be it 1 row, be it 10 rows, whatever it is, ultimately it will be in tabular format only. It will be in tabular format. But when it comes to API testing, it will be in something like this JSON format. This is the format in which you will be getting the answer. Of course, API testing, okay, you will be testing two types of APIs, REST-based APIs or SOAP UI APIs. Okay, REST is the most commonly used API type. So you'll be using REST APIs here also in this course. So that is why I've asked you to open this particular website so that you will be doing API testing. So open this website. API will simply facilitate communication between two different applications. It's like an intermediate between two applications. Okay, it will take your request, process it, and it will give you a response. That's the whole purpose of your API is. Okay, so API is not any software. You can't even, you can't press any button, you can't open it, you can't do anything. It's just that API is a piece of code. What that piece of code will do, once you click any endpoint, okay, once you hit any endpoint, it will perform the required operation and it will give you an output. You can think of it like your database only. At the back end of your API, it will be database only. At the back end of your API, it will be database only. Think of API testing simply as database testing minus the SQL queries. Your API testing is nothing but database testing minus your SQL queries. You will not write any SQL queries in your API testing. You will not even write any code. All the SQL queries, everything is written already. And after writing the SQL queries, you will be given an endpoint like this. You take that endpoint, you paste that endpoint in your Postman, you send a request, you'll get an answer. And in your database testing, you'll get it in tabular format. When you write your SQL queries and execute your SQL query, you'll get your answer in tabular format. But here, you'll be getting it in JSON. It will be in JSON format. Java script object notation. You will be getting the response in JSON format. Most of the times, if it's REST-based APIs, you will be majorly you will be using JSON format only. Otherwise, you can also use XML format also, which you will learn in the upcoming sessions, not in API testing, but somewhere else. Okay. When we use REST and when we use SOAP. So REST is most popularly used because REST involves less learning curve. REST is easy to learn. REST is most reliable and REST is faster than your SOAP. So that is why most of them prefer REST than SOAP. SOAP is sort of, some people call it as a very old technology when compared to REST. REST is relatively new is what they say. But the most high preference is given to your REST-based APIs only. Okay, you will very rarely encounter SOAP UI APIs. Very rare. But the process again is the same for SOAP UI also. But for SOAP UI based testing, you will need an entirely different application to test it. Postman cannot be used for that. So you will have a separate tool for that. The learning curve will be a little bit different than your REST-based APIs. So that is why REST is easy to learn. Okay, even in your interview, is not going to ask you which API you are thorough with. He's simply going to ask you the different concepts in your API test. I'll tell you what they are. So think of your API testing as database testing minus SQL queries. So without SQL queries, will you be able to do your database testing? Without writing any SQL query, will you be able to do your API database testing? No, you cannot do it. But in your API testing, you can do it even without writing any single piece of code, because that code will be written and that database code. Okay, think of, so you have this endpoint here. Okay, this is the endpoint. If I hit on this endpoint, this is what the answer I get. This is the entire answer. So the answer here is here, it is in your JSON format. Hitting on that endpoint, clicking on that endpoint, or executing your SQL query are both the same. You are doing the same operation here. Hitting the endpoint or executing your database query, both of them are the same. More or less, both of them are the same. The major difference is in your database testing, you will be getting the result in tabular format. In your API testing, you'll be getting it in JSON format. So what is an endpoint? Endpoint is nothing but, let's say you have a database. Let's say you have an API. The backend of your API is also database only, to be really honest. So you have an API. You want to do, let's say in Facebook, you want to create an account. Okay, you want to create a new account. What will you do? You'll open Facebook. Next, you will click on create new account. Next, you will fill in all those details, and then you'll say sign up. So you'll have to interact with a lot of UI based, UI. You'll have to interact with a lot of UI here. Yes or no? You'll be interacting with a lot of UI here. You'll have to click a lot of buttons when you want to create an account in Facebook. So instead of this, what you can do is you can simply use an endpoint, send your data in the endpoint. In the link itself, you can send all of your data, and just send a request to that endpoint. Take care of the rest. It will directly update the database with your user data. As simple as that. So why do we use API testing, or why do we use APIs is sometimes to bypass these UI based options. Sometimes the UIs are a little tricky to automate. So in those cases, what they'll do is they'll do all the activities, all the crude operations, basically. They'll do all the crude operations using API endpoints, not even using database queries also. Database queries, you are supposed to write some SQL. In database testing, you are supposed to write some SQL. But in API testing, the SQL query is already written by your developer only. And instead of giving you the SQL query, he will give you an endpoint. That endpoint will take care of the rest. You just open the endpoint and send a request. That's it. It will take care of the rest. So similarly, just like how you have crude operations in database, here also in API testing also you'll have crude operations. Same crude operations. But here you call them as HTTP request methods. Typing your query or hitting an endpoint is nothing but request. You are requesting for something. You are requesting for some data. You are requesting for some resource. You're asking the server for something. The server will take your request. It will process and it will give you a response. Even in database testing also, you have typed your SQL query here. You have typed your SQL query. You have executed the SQL query. If the server is not switched on, will your SQL query run? Imagine your XAMPP server is not switched on. Will your SQL query still work? No, because the server is not able to process your request. If there is no server, your request is just a request. It will not get processed. So for your request to be processed, there should be a server. The server will take your request. It will process your request. And if I execute this SQL query, or if I send this request, what will I get? I will get all the records whose salary is between 8 lakhs and 10 lakhs. That is what is my response is. A tabular format with all the requested rows. That will be my response. Similarly, even in API testing, you have something called as HTTP request methods. Just like how you have create, insert, select, alter, update, delete, truncate, drop. Similarly, in API testing, if you want to create something, call it as a post request. Post. Think of it like this. You are posting something on Facebook. So that qualifies as post. You are inserting something, post. So the create operation in API testing is your post. Create operation is your post. In API testing, if you want to do create, if you want to create new data, you want to insert new data, then you will use post request. In your database, you will use either create or insert keywords. Whereas for your read or retrieve, In your database, what will you use? Read or retrieve option for the read or retrieve operation. Which keyword will you use in database testing? Exactly, you will use select. You will say select star from select so and so columns from table name. So similarly, in your API testing, you do something like get. You'll use something called as get. Get is another HTTP request method. If you want to retrieve or read something from the database, instead of writing writing an SQL query, you will have a separate endpoint to do this select thing. So you have written some roughly 80 SQL queries in database testing. So each SQL query does a different operation. Do you think any two SQL queries do the same thing? Any of these SQL queries, are any of these SQL queries doing the same operation, or each of them is performing a different operation? Here you are retrieving an employee whose ID is 45678. Here you are retrieving an employee whose salary is greater than 50 lakhs or 5 lakh, whatever it is. So each SQL query is performing a different operation here. Although it might be select only, but the selecting of the data is different. So similarly, even in your API testing also, for selecting, you will use get. But what you will select depends on the endpoint. I'll show you shortly, don't worry. So similarly, if you want to update something, what will you use in database testing? You will use either update or alter here. Database testing. Here, we'll say put or patch. They put or patch request in API testing. Next, delete. What will you use in database testing? You can use delete, you can use drop, you can use truncate based on your requirement. Here you will say simply delete only in API testing. So the major difference between your API testing and your database testing is, in your database testing, you write your SQL queries, execute your SQL queries. Okay, in your API testing, you don't write any code, you don't write any queries, you don't write any code. You will be given an endpoint. Who will give that endpoint? How will you get that endpoint? The endpoint will be given by the API developer. The person who develops the API will give you the API endpoint. So if I give you this endpoint, okay, let's say I give you this endpoint. Okay, I'll say copy link and I'll give you this endpoint. What do you think this endpoint is going to do? What do you understand by looking at this endpoint? Do you understand anything by looking at this endpoint? You will not understand anything because you're not the API developer. You don't know what this endpoint will do. So your developer will also have to give a small brief description what this endpoint has to do. Your developer will have to tell you what this endpoint will do. Otherwise, in your project, you might be having multiple endpoints. Just like how you have multiple SQL queries, you might have multiple endpoints in your entire project. If you don't know what is the functionality of each endpoint, at least by looking at your SQL query, you will understand what this SQL query is doing. Yes or no? By looking at this SQL query, will you be able to say what this SQL query will do? Yes or no? But in your API testing, that might not be possible. In your API testing, that might not be possible. By looking at this endpoint, how will you say what this endpoint is going to do? You're a developer, the person who has developed this endpoint, this API, he has to give a small brief description what this endpoint is going to do. So now I can tell what this endpoint will do. Even without the description also, I can tell what this endpoint does. How to understand this endpoint? What does this endpoint do? Let me explain now. So everyone, I hope you have opened request.in. Request means request response. Shortcut for request and response. I hope everyone has opened request.in. If not, please do it already. Fast. Open your request.in. Scroll to the bottom. Not bottom, scroll down a little bit. You'll get all these get, post, put, patch, all of these. Okay. I hope everyone has opened this. Yeah, Chrome only. Along with your Postman in a separate tab, Postman in one tab, and this one in another tab. Okay, I hope everyone has opened it. All right, cool. So now what I want you guys to do is copy the endpoint. So obviously it will be clicked on this one only. Copy this endpoint like this. Right click on this and say copy link address. Copy the endpoint. Copy the endpoint. Copy the endpoint. So I hope everyone has copied the endpoint. Now go back to your postman. Go back to your postman. Hold on. I'll give access to one of you. Hold on. So that you can start from the beginning. Anusha, access each channel. Share your screen. Okay. సాయి ఇష్యూ ఏంటో నాకు ఒకసారి స్క్రీన్ షాట్ పంపి. కాపీ లింక్ అడ్రస్ తల్లి. అది కాదు గ్రీన్ కలర్ టెక్స్ట్. యూ షుడ్ కాపీ ది గ్రీన్ కలర్ టెక్స్ట్. అది కాపీ దట్ వన్. కాపీ లింక్ అడ్రస్. Copy link address. Okay, I hope everyone is present here. I hope everyone is here now. Okay, cool. Is everyone on the same page now? Okay, cool, fine, cool. All right. View more actions click చేయమ్మా. That one. అది కాదు. పైన 3 dots at the top. అక్కడ కాదు, అది కాదు. మై వర్క్ స్పేస్ పైన. Okay, fine, no problem. Plus symbol కొట్టేసి click on plus symbol. Everyone click on that plus symbol now. Everyone click on that plus symbol and you should get a screen like this. బ్రదర్ అసలు నువ్వు ప్రాజెక్టే క్లోన్ చేసుకోలేదు బ్రదర్. అసలు నువ్వు మధ్యలో క్లాసెస్ అటెండ్ అవ్వకపోతే ఇదే హెడేక్ అవుతుంది. నువ్వు అసలు ప్రాజెక్టే క్లోన్ చేసుకోలేదు ఇంతవరకు. అసలు నీ దగ్గర ప్రాజెక్టే లేదు. యూ డిడ్ నాట్ ఈవెన్ క్లోన్ ది ప్రాజెక్ట్. యూ డిడ్ నాట్ ఈవెన్ టేక్ SQL ఫైల్. అసలు యూ కాంట్ ఈవెన్ డూ ది పుల్ నో. ఎందుకంటే మీరు క్లోనే చేసుకోలేదు. వాట్ ఐ విల్ సజెస్ట్ యూ ఇస్ 1 week back, at least go back 1 week and refer to the demo videos. I mean previous videos, because cloning will take some time. మీరు రెగ్యులర్ ఉండాలి. ఐ అండర్స్టాండ్. SQL అటెండ్ అవ్వలేదు కరెక్టే. SQL ఒక్కటే కాదు నేను పంపించింది. SQL is not the only file I have sent you. I have sent you 2 other Word documents and 1 Excel file, and today I have sent another Word document. So before SQL file I have sent 3 Word documents for you. This is not the first day I am sending you the SQL file or something else, some other file. నేను మీకు ఒక విషయం చెప్తాను. మీరు ఏమనుకోనంటే నేను ఒక విషయం చెప్తాను. నేను ఇట్లా అంటున్నా అని చెప్పి మీరు ఏమనుకోకండి. యు లుక్ అ లిటిల్ ఓవర్ కాన్ఫిడెంట్. ఐఎమ్ రియలీ సారీ టు సే దిస్. మీరు హర్ట్ అవుతారేమో అని కాదనట్లే. ఐఎమ్ రియలీ సారీ ఇఫ్ యు ఆర్ హర్ట్, బట్ యు లుక్ అ లిటిల్ ఓవర్ కాన్ఫిడెంట్. స్టార్టింగ్ నుంచి కూడా క్లాసెస్ సరిగ్గా వినట్లేదు. I understand that you are already a manual tester and you might feel bored about this, but trust me, you will have to be regular to the session even if you know all of this, because you might not know all of these things. Why do you think I have introduced at the very beginning? Idi automation lo ravali me. This should be usually covered in automation, but why do you think I've covered this in manual only? So that you guys get used to this by the time I start automation. That is the purpose of starting all IntelliJ and all this stuff. So కొంచెం మీరు రెగ్యులర్ గా అటెండ్ అవుతే నేను ఏమైనా మీకు హెల్ప్ చేయగలుగుతా. లేకపోతే బస్సు వెళ్ళిపోయిన తర్వాత మళ్ళీ వెనక్కి రావాలంటే రాదు. అది ఒక్కటి మాత్రం అర్థం చేసుకోండి. నాకు చాలా మెసేజ్ వస్తాయి రోజు, ఫాస్ట్ గా చెప్పండి అని చెప్పి అని. సో ఐ రియలీ కాంట్ గో ఫాస్ట్. అండ్ ఇన్ని మెసేజ్ వచ్చిన తర్వాత మీకోసం నేను మళ్ళీ వెనక్కి రాలేను కూడా నేను. అందుకే మీకు ముందే డిస్క్లైమర్ ఇస్తున్నాను నేను మీకు. సో కొంచెం మీరు రెగ్యులర్ గా అటెండ్ అవ్వండి. ఐ అండర్స్టాండ్ దిస్ ఈస్ బోరింగ్ ఫర్ యూ. యు ఆర్ ఆల్రెడీ అ వర్కింగ్ ఎంప్లాయీ, మాన్యువల్ టెస్టర్ ఇన్ అ కంపెనీ. ఐ అండర్స్టాండ్ థరోలీ, బట్ there is a starting point for everything. You might have to start, you might have to swallow everything, and you may have to listen to me. I'm really sorry if you can't attend. Okay, class ending lo chuddam. Ippudu light teeskondi, inedi inandi meer. దాని గురించి వదిలేసేయండి మీరు. పిచ్చ లైట్ ఇప్పుడు అది చెప్పిందంటే క్లాస్ లో ఉన్న అందరి దగ్గరికి పోతుంది. సో మీరు మాత్రం రెగ్యులర్ గా ఉండాలి బ్రదర్. నెక్స్ట్ టైం నుంచి అయితే అస్సలు కుదరదు నాతోటి. ఈసారి ఏదో ట్రై చేస్తాను, నేను టైం ఉంటే చెప్తా, కంగారు ఏం లేదు. బట్ మీరు రెగ్యులర్ గా అటెండ్ అవ్వాలి. మీరు కొంచెం మీరు ఎంతైనా ఆటోమేషన్ చక్కర్ల వాడి బేసిక్స్ మర్చిపోతున్నారు. మీరు ఆటోమేషన్ చక్కర్ల వాడి బేసిక్స్ మర్చిపోవద్దు. అర్థమవుతుందా? కొంచెం should be regular to the session, even though you know all of this. So you have copied your endpoint. Go back to regress. Anusha, go back to regress, Amma. So this endpoint, you got this green text by selecting which option at the left hand side. Which option did you select at the left hand side? Exactly, list users. You have selected list users. So that is why you got this endpoint. What is the HTTP request method that you are seeing there? I've just now told you 5 HTTP request methods. What HTTP request are you seeing there? Get, exactly. And get is used for which kind of CRUD operation? Get is used for which kind of CRUD operation? Read. So when they say that this endpoint is only for get, you should use this only for get. You have a get endpoint, an endpoint which supports get, and you use post, it's not going to work out. Okay, if you have written SQL query for select, you shouldn't expect it to do insert, right? Similarly, for each CRUD operation, you will have a different endpoint. You want to do some insertion into the database, so you'll have separate endpoints which support only post HTTP request method. On that endpoint, you cannot do get, you cannot do put, you cannot do patch, you cannot do delete. No, that endpoint will not simply support all of these other methods. This endpoint which you have copied now to Postman, it will support only get. So that is why they have mentioned get symbol like that. Get symbol icon. Yeah. So this symbol get indicates that this endpoint will only support get request. And when you are doing this in Postman, you should select the request type as get only and only. You copy a get your endpoint and you do post on that, it might not work. So be careful with your HTTP request methods. Understand what the requirement is first, and then do whatever you want. Now that you have copied your endpoint, and which HTTP request is this endpoint supporting? This supports only get request. Go back to your Postman. In Postman, at the left, in the it says enter URL or paste text. So copy your endpoint here. In your API testing, you don't call it as URL, you call it as endpoint. It's an endpoint. You don't call it as a URL, although that is also correct, but it does not work like your other URLs, like your Facebook URL or your Google URL. It does not work like that. It needs to be accessed only with the help of Postman. So just to the left side of this request endpoint, you have a drop down where you can select the different HTTP request. Click on that. You have so many options here. So which request will you guys select now? For this endpoint, which request type will you select? Get, exactly. So from the drop down, you should select get. Select get from the drop down. Now, get this go. You have get. Now, what will you do? You should send a request. So click on send. Your request has been sent and your response is received at the bottom of your screen. This is what is your response is. So just try to read the response. What do you understand by reading it? By reading the response? What did you understand by reading the response? So your response is in JSON format, key value pairs. JSON format is nothing but key and a value. Key value pairs is what you have in your JSON format. How to identify key value pairs? Simple. So in your database testing, how do you identify rows and columns? How do you identify rows and columns? In your database testing, you identify rows by horizontal and columns by vertical. This is how you usually identify in database testing. Rows are in horizontal, columns are vertical. But here you identify your key value pairs like this. So can you guys see a colon, two dots in every line? You should see two dots. In every line, you should see two dots. Colon. Can you guys see colon? Exactly that one. That is called as a colon. COLON colon. So in every line, you should be seeing colon like this. So was everyone able to send the request? Did you all get the response like this? Every single one of you, were you able to send a request? You should be getting a response like this. Okay. So after you get the response, in the response, you see all this JSON format. You are so used to your database format, tabular format, that you might find this a little difficult to understand. But trust me, this is very easy to understand. Don't worry. So in every line, most of the lines, you should be seeing two dots like this. Two dots. Okay. The left side of the dot is always your key. The left side of these two dots, the left side of your colon is always your key. The right side of your colon is always value. So now tell me some keys. Tell me some keys from your response. From your response, tell me some keys. Page, per page, total, total pages, data, ID, email, first name, last name, avatar, all this. All these are your keys. So your values, ID, for ID key, your value is 7. For email key, your value is michael.lawson@request.in. For your first name key, your value is Michael. For your last name key, your value is Lawson. Okay, everyone is able to see all your key value pairs now. Understood how to identify key value pairs? If you want to retrieve your values, you can only retrieve with the help of your keys. You cannot directly retrieve your values. Keys are always important. Unless you have a key, you cannot retrieve your value. Okay, unless you have a key, you can't retrieve your value. Okay, keys are always important to retrieve your values. You should be able to identify your keys and values. So now I hope everyone is clear with what your key and what your value is. So after knowing this, can you guys tell me what are you actually doing in this particular request? By sending this request, what are you trying to achieve here? What did you understand? All right, user data is all right, fine. I understand user data, but if you can put more effort, what do you think are we retrieving here? Because we have used get request. Get request means as simple as retrieving data. It's like selecting some data from the database. So you are selecting some data, user data. What specifically are you selecting? No, someone has said details of Michael. Hold on. Jinisha, details of Michael. You are almost closer. You're almost close. You're not just retrieving the details of Michael. You are retrieving the details of some other people also. So how to understand what this request is? Your developer will, however, tell you what this request is. No problem. But for you to have a basic idea, by looking at the endpoint, if you want to understand what is happening in this endpoint, I'll simply give a small explanation for you. Okay, I'll give you a simple analogy here. Okay. Yes, exactly, Supriya. You are trying to retrieve the list of users. If you go back to Request website, you have some small description also. Request website kellamma pakkana tab lo Postman pakkana tab lo Request website undi kada. Maybe అక్కడ మీ జూమ్ అడ్డం వస్తుందేమో మీకు. మీ జూమ్ అడ్డం వస్తున్నట్టుంది. ఇప్పుడు చేయండి, రైట్. సో వాట్ ఈస్ ఇట్ సేయింగ్? డిస్క్రిప్షన్ ఏం చెప్తుంది మీకు? వాట్ డిస్క్రిప్షన్? అక్కడ కాదు, పైన go to the top. The place where you have copied your endpoint, what is it saying? List users. Akkada kaadu, just beside your get, list users. It's giving a small description. What is this endpoint doing? This endpoint is simply, okay, this endpoint is simply listing all the users. So if I have to analyze this endpoint, what this endpoint actually does, by looking at the endpoint, if I have to understand the functionality of the endpoint, I'll By looking at the SQL query, will you be able to say what the SQL query is doing? At least you'll have some idea. Yes or no? By looking at the SQL query, will you understand what that SQL query is doing? Yes, obviously you'll understand. At least something you will understand. But how to understand your endpoint? I'll tell you. Go back to request Postman. Go back to Postman. So how does your endpoint look like? Your endpoint looks something like this. request.in/API/users page is equal to 2. This is what is your endpoint. So how to read this endpoint? Let's go back to the basics of your database system. Let's go back to the basics of your database testing. So in your database testing, where is your data stored? Where is your data stored in your database in your database testing? Where was your data stored when we have done our database testing? Database are tables. Database are tables. Tables. Your data was stored in tables. Where were your tables stored? Where were your tables stored? Exactly. Database contains tables. Tables contain rows and columns. Your tables contain data basically. So similar fashion, even in your API testing also, and your application has a database, obviously, right? Just like Facebook has a database, YouTube has a database, Google has a database. Every other application has a database. Yes or no? Without database, you cannot work. You are typing something in WhatsApp. You open the chat history. How will you be able to open the chat history? Because your chats are stored in the WhatsApp database. Similarly, here also, every application will have a database. So what is the name of the application in this endpoint? What is the name of the application in this endpoint? Exactly. Who is that person who said this answer? Chandana and Gajendra. Yes. Request.in is the name of your application. Request.in is your application name. What does an application contain? Application contains database. Now tell me, what is the database here? Request.in is the application. Application contains a database. So what is the database here? No. Chandana again. Chandana is correct here. API is the database here. API is the database. You can understand it like that. Request is the application. Inside the request application, you have a database called as API. Inside the API database, now what is the table name? Now what is the table name? Users. Exactly. What is the table name? Users is the table name. Page is equal to 2. Page is equal to 2. What are you doing here? Page is equal to 2 means what are you doing here? It's like your where condition. You are simply saying select all from your users table where page is equal to 2. If I have to write this endpoint as an SQL query, this is what I will write. If I have to translate this endpoint to an SQL query, I'll translate it like this. I mean, I might not be correct, but this is how I will understand about this endpoint. How to understand this endpoint? It says request.in/API/users ? Page is equal to 2. That question mark indicates that this is a GET request. Okay, hold on a minute. The question mark indicates that this is a GET request, or sometimes this can also be a delete request also. That's a different thing altogether. But that question mark denotes that you're trying to retrieve something from the application. And what are you retrieving? You are retrieving the user details where page is equal to 2. Where page is equal to 2. This is what you are doing. So if you analyze your response, what does your response say? Page is equal to? In your response, what does your page say? For the page key, what value do you see? For the page key in your response, 2, exactly. And per page, 6. Per page, it will show only 6. So instead of page is equal to 2, can you give page is equal to 1 and try? try the same request. Instead of page is equal to do, page is equal to do, give page is equal to 1 and then send a request. Are you getting any answer? Are you getting a different answer or same answer? So what are the IDs starting from? The ID is starting from 1 and the ID is ending at? The ID is starting at 1 and the ID is ending at what? In your line number 8. In your response line number 8. In your response line number 8. ID is starting at 1 and ID is ending at what? If you scroll to the bottom of your response. 6 exactly. And if you give page is equal to 2, try what are you getting? Try doing it by giving page is equal to 2 now. So where is your ID starting now in page number 2? Exactly. Again, you will have 6 records, 7 to 12. Exactly. So the same thing can be done in SQL also, database testing also, yes or no? So if you guys have to write an SQL query for this, how will you write the SQL query for this one? If you have to write an SQL query for this, how will you write it? Try writing an SQL query for this end, because at the back end also this is what happens. Exactly, Rema. Correct. Correct. Rajesh. No, you have written select all from API. I said API is the database. API is the database. No, you don't select from the database, right? You select from the table. You don't select from the database. No, not just select star from users. No, that is not doing select star from users. It is doing select star from users where page is equal to 2. Select star from users where page is equal to 2. When you send a request for this endpoint, this is what it is doing at the back end. But are you getting your response in tabular format? No, you are getting it in which format? JSON format. Exactly. So, do you think API testing is easy or database testing is easy? Which one do you think is easy, database or API? API testing will sound a little bit easy for you, but both of them are same. Both of them have got similar complexity, similar advantages and similar disadvantages. You can choose whatever you want. So that is why if you understand database a little bit better, that is why if you understand database testing, you will understand API testing a little bit better. All right. So similarly, passed some values here. If you look at your endpoint, okay, let me share my screen now. Now I will share my screen. Hold on. Chal dale. Thank you. Okay. So now, what is the endpoint? This is the endpoint. Let me copy this endpoint. Okay, let me copy this endpoint. Okay, this is the endpoint. Oh, sorry. This is not the endpoint. That's so. Because space is equal to Ravale. Okay. So this is what is my endpoint is. So as I already told you, this is the name of the application. This is the database. This is the table. This is the condition, where condition. So similarly, even in your database testing also, won't you execute this command, use database? You will obviously execute this command, right? Use database. Then you will start writing all of your SQL queries. Similarly, imagine the same thing here. You are selecting your database. Inside the database, you have this table, and this table, you are accessing a particular row here based on a condition. The condition is page number is equal to 2. So how to understand this endpoint? Now is everyone clear to understand this endpoint? I mean, how to understand this endpoint? Are you guys clear with this one now? Of course, this might not work always. To be really honest with you, this might not always work. This is a very basic example. Sometimes you may understand, sometimes you may not understand. So can you tell me what is happening here? Can you tell me what is happening here? You can explain this to a certain extent, but not fully. You don't understand how to do this. And if I don't tell you what HTTP request I'm using post here. You'll not even understand. Or let me say I'm using get, you'll not even understand what this endpoint is doing. So sometimes it is possible to understand your endpoint, sometimes it is not possible to understand your endpoint. So wherever you have this question mark, it is easy to understand. But what is this question mark? What is this question mark? What is it doing? So there are some two concepts called as query parameters and path parameters in API testing. If you open your notes, you will find those details in your notes. Query parameters and path parameters. So what is a query parameter? What is a path parameter? What do you understand by query? Querying means what? No, don't say SQL query. Query in general. General English, what is a query? Exactly. Question, doubt. You're asking something. Basically, you're asking for something. Question, query, doubt means you're asking for something. So here, what are you asking for? You're asking for users where page number is equal to 2. So how to understand this one URL will contain both query parameter as well as path parameter. This one URL has both of them. How to identify your query parameter and path parameter? Simple. I have to give you a very shortcut to identify this. The left side of your question mark is always your path parameter. But what is your path parameter? Path parameter is nothing but it is telling you where to look into for this data. Where are you looking into? In which table, in which database you need to look into to get your details. So in which database are you seeing this? You're looking into API database and the users table. So your path parameter will give you the path or the location of your resource of your data. It will give you the location or path where your data is present. But to retrieve your data, you may have to send a request. And if you want a particular data, here you want data of page number 2. On page number 2, whoever is present, all those details you want. So similarly, you have just like how you have a where condition. Here you have a query parameter. So how to identify a query parameter or path parameter? The left side of your question mark is always your path parameter. So till where do you have this path parameter in this endpoint? Till where is your path parameter? Left side of your question mark is your path parameter. So till where do you have path parameters? Up till users is your path parameter. And what is your query parameter then? What is your query parameter then? Page is equal to 2 is your query parameter. Page is equal to 2 is your query parameter. Do you have any query parameter here? Okay. No. No. Cool. So again, I hope everyone is clear with your query parameters and path parameters and whatever has been discussed till now. All okay? It's nothing but you do your where condition in your database testing, right? To write where condition in your database testing. Why do you write where condition in your database testing? HTTPS, that's not a problem. That's all right. HTTP or HTTPS, anything is all right. The endpoint is what matters. So why do you use where condition in your database testing? Something to show. Don't you think select is doing the same thing? Select will obviously show, no? Then why do you have to do where? Select is already retrieving your data. Why do you want to use where condition? Exactly. One person has written the answer correctly. Filter. Sanil. Sanil has written filter. That is what is the correct answer is. You want to filter your data. That is the ideal response idea. So that you will filter your answers. instead of saying select all from employee or select all from employee where location is Hyderabad, the results are different. Select all from employees and select all from employees using where condition, both of them are different. If you say select all from employee where employee is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will get only selected data. No, you're not sorting the data. Kota, Gupta, sorting anta. Is sorting at light on sorting aitunda. Sorting adu. Is not sorting. Where condition is not used for sorting. Where condition is used for filtering. Sorting ki what will you use? Rest of you. How will you sort your data in your database testing? Exactly. Order by. Correct. Exactly. You will use order by to sort. Gupta, anu practice chestalevu basic ga. Sorting ki you will use order by. Sorting lo, are you really filtering anything? No. You're sorting in ascending order, descending order. You're not deleting or you're not missing or skipping any data. You're sorting your data in ascending order or descending order. That's it. You're not filtering anything there. But if you use where condition, you are filtering your data. You're not retrieving all the data. You are retrieving the data where some certain condition is satisfied. So that is how your query parameter functions actually. Your path parameter will simply say which database I need to use, which table I need to go into. Path parameter, as it says, path parameter will simply show the path or the database or the table where you need to look into for the data. But your query parameter will filter your data and give you only specific set of data. Will give you only specific data, just like how you use your where condition. Okay. So at least by now you should be able to understand this thoroughly. Or if you even more simply, if you want to find it, I mean, path parameters always have, instead of question mark, path parameters always have this forward slashes like this. Your query parameters always have a question mark. Okay. So now did you guys understand what is path and query parameter? So does this have any query parameter? Does this have any query parameter? No. No, exactly. You're all correct. Very good. No, this does not have any query parameter. All it has is path parameters only. So Kavya, if you're not seeing Git option, simple. If you're not seeing Git option, it simply means that you have opened your dummy project, maybe some other dummy project. If you open NIT 9PM project, you'll obviously find Git option. Pakka for sure. Pakka for sure. You might be opening some other project other than NIT 9PM project. So close your project like this. Close your project and then select your NIT 9PM project and then try to open Git. Okay. So similarly, you have another endpoint here like this. Copy this endpoint and now send another request. Okay. This endpoint, what does this endpoint do? This endpoint gives single user. So which HTTP request method should I use now? Which HTTP request should I use? Come on, folks, you need to respond. Exactly. I need to use get. I need to use get. And what to do next? What to do next? Send. Exactly. Send. You are getting ID is equal to 2 details, user details. As it said, what did it say? It said single user. So you get single user details. No, it's not having any query parameters. They have designed this endpoint in such a way. Ultimately, if the endpoint has query parameter or if it has only path parameter, it's up to the API designer who designs these endpoints and API. It's not mandatory that all of the GET requests will have query parameter. Maybe, maybe not. because we didn't develop the API, so we really don't know about this thing. This is a publicly hosted API. This API is hosted publicly. Ideally, you should never do retrieve first. You should always do create first. Ante kada. Even in your database testing, you have first done create, insert, and then you have did select. In your database testing, if you observe the order, we have first done create, next insert, next we have done select. Because unless there is any data, what will you retrieve? But since this is a publicly hosted API, just like how you guys are able to send requests, someone else from other part of the world can also send the request. This is not exclusive for India only. Not exclusive for, this is not my website. I don't host this one. This is a publicly hosted API for API testing practice. So there is already lots of data on this API. So that is why we have first started with get. Okay. And it's not mandatory that every get request, every get query endpoint will have query parameter mandatorily. No, maybe not. The person who has designed the API and the endpoints only will know that. So that is why, as I've already told you earlier, you never know what the API's, the endpoint's functionality is. The functionality of the endpoint has to be explained at least briefly by your developer. Should give at least some sort of detail about the endpoint. Otherwise, you don't know what your API endpoint is doing there. How will anyone know? Any sane person will not know what this endpoint does. Your developer has to give a description, a small explanation what this endpoint does. Okay. Now, is that clear, Rajesh? Okay, cool. So this is your first day of API testing. I don't want to confuse you with too much of stuff. Okay. So you have get, post, put, patch, and delete. These 5 options in your API testing. You can do more also, but these are the crude operations that you do in your API testing. Okay. So go through your notes. As of today, you should understand how to send a request. What is an endpoint? What is an API? What is a query parameter? What is a path parameter? This is what you need to understand as of today's session. So are you guys clear with this one? Okay. Okay. We'll get more clarity in tomorrow's session. We'll get further clarity in tomorrow's session. I'll also try to give you an example about Arogya Setu and your COVID application, using which you will be retrieving, using which people have booked online vaccination slots also. There was an API to book vaccination slots, Arogya Setu and COVID. That was exploited by many software engineers, and they have booked they have booked vaccination slots for themselves by using API automation. Okay, you learn that tomorrow. I'm not going to show you how to exploit it, but after tomorrow's session, you will have a fair understanding what API testing is and what are the benefits of API automation or API requests rather than your database requests or rather than your UI. In your UI, imagine if you have to retrieve the list of users on a single page, you'll have to click a lot of buttons. You'll have to open the website. You'll have to log into the website. You'll have to then select the buttons, click the buttons. After you click the buttons, you will get the answer. Your UI involves a lot of buttons here. So Selenium is okay. Using Selenium, you can automate those buttons, not a problem. But sometimes if you're not in a mood to automate your UI, you can simply send API request and retrieve your data like this. As simple as that. It's as if you got access to the backend of the application. As simple as that. API endpoint. If you got your endpoint, that's it. You can do whatever you want. It's not a loophole. Just telling you that your buttons also do the same thing. Your API endpoints also will do the same thing. Your SQL queries also will do the same thing. It's just that the representation of data is different. In your buttons, your data will be very beautifully visible there. Using UI, using HTML, CSS, and all that stuff, your data will be presented in a very beautiful fashion. In your database, you'll get in tabular format. In your API testing, you will be getting it in JSON format. That's the only difference. Whatever that your buttons do, the same thing can be done by your API endpoint also. So why can't we use API endpoints instead of UI, instead of buttons? Not everyone can do it. And it's not mandatory that every application has to maintain an API separately, right? If you have an API, you can use that API endpoints. But if you don't have an API, you don't use API testing, you don't have endpoints. You'll have to do everything by using UI and SQL queries only. That's how it is. So these days, API endpoints have become very common in every project. So you can expect a little bit of API testing side by side in your project also. So this is how usually you do manual API testing. So at least by now you should have some fair understanding how to send a request. I hope you all have that understanding now. Okay. So, Kavya, ఒక్క నిమిషం తల్లి. Path parameter. Anything left side of your question mark is your path parameter. As simple as that. Shortcut. Ante. Kavya. Until what point under? Cheppine kada. Until the question mark. Wherever you get the question mark, that's where your path parameter stops. How will we know the left side and cheppine kada? Left side of your question mark anna kada. So adi depends on your endpoint. You should look at your endpoint and then you will do it. Google, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. Maybe if you can give me more details about it, if you can provide me some endpoints, I'll help you out. So, Kavya, I've given you the co-host access. You can share your screen. చెప్పమ్మా చెప్పినా కదా నేను ఇది నీ శాంపుల్ డమ్మీ ప్రాజెక్ట్ అని చెప్పి అని మరి డమ్మీ ప్రాజెక్ట్ లో ఎట్లా వస్తుంది తల్లి ఇది నీ డమ్మీ ప్రాజెక్ట్ కదా డమ్మీ ప్రాజెక్ట్ లో రాదని చెప్పినా కదా నేను ఆల్రెడీ ఇందాక క్లోజ్ చేయమని చెప్పినా కదా ఈ ప్రాజెక్ట్ ని నేను what does to mean here? Okay, so Srinivas, so ideally you can understand by looking at the endpoint. It is asking for users on page number 2, or this can also mean username, user with ID is equal to 2. But till what point can you understand? Ante till users you can understand what it is doing. But after users, the /2 you may or may not understand it. Because as I already told you, if you don't have query parameters, not always you will have query parameters. Sometimes query parameters will not be there in your endpoint. Like this example, the second example which I have given you. Sometimes you will not have query parameters. At that point, it will be a little difficult for you to understand what this endpoint is doing. So that is why I told you your developer will give you the description of the endpoint. Close చేయాలి తల్లి ప్రాజెక్ట్ క్లోజ్ చేయాలి ప్రాజెక్ట్ చెప్పాను కదా లెఫ్ట్ సైడ్ టాప్ లో ఉంటది నీకు అని చెప్పి అని చూపించాను కదా స్క్రీన్ మీద నేను ఫైల్ క్లోజ్ ప్రాజెక్ట్ అదేంది ప్రాజెక్టే లేదా ఇంతవరకు ప్రాజెక్టే లేకపోవడం ఏంది రోజు ఎట్లా పుల్ తీసుకుంటున్నావు మరి ప్రాజెక్ట్ అసలు ఇన్ని రోజులు పుల్ ఎట్లా తీసుకున్నారు మరి మీరు అసలు నాకు అర్థం కాక అడుగుతున్నా సరే రోజు పుల్ తీసుకున్నాను అడిగితే పుల్ తీసుకున్నా అని చెప్తున్నారు కదా మరి ఏమైంది అది కనిపిస్తలేదు నాకు ఇక్కడ మరి అది ఎట్లా మరి ఇట్లా అయితే మీరు అబద్ధం చెప్పిందా లేకపోతే డిలీట్ అయిపోయిందా ఓన్లీ వన్ ఆన్సర్ did you like or did it was it deleted one of the two options only ఎప్పటి నుంచి అటెండ్ అవ్వలేదు తల్లి ఎన్ని రోజుల నుంచి అటెండ్ అవ్వలేదు మళ్ళీ ఇదే మిస్టేక్ మీ దగ్గర నుంచి మళ్ళీ ఇదే మిస్టేక్ చేస్తున్నారు మీరు ఐ డిడ్ నాట్ అటెండ్ ఫ్రమ్ DB అంటున్నారు మీరు ఓకే you might not have attended the database sessions I understand but even before that I have given you the manual testing notes also from GitHub that also you have taken full I have sent you this particular test case template Excel file also That also you should have taken by pull. మరి అప్పుడైతే ఉండాలి కదా మీరు సెషన్ లో. All right. So everyone who has not yet downloaded the project, this is the last attempt. Do the same thing. Okay. Everyone who did not have any single file till now, the rest of them can leave. If you have all the 5 files in manual testing folder, okay. If you have files of all the 5 files I've sent in manual testing folder, you can leave the session. The next part is not for you. You have already done this. If you still want to stay and listen, no problem. You can. So if you do not have any notes, or at least you do not have your project also. No, today I did not send anything. ఇవాళ ఏం చెప్పినా నేను ఏమైనా పంపించిన ఇవాళ నేను జస్ట్ నోట్స్ పంపించిన అంతే. ఆ నోట్స్ ను పుల్ తీసుకోవాలి సింపుల్ గా అంతే. ఆ నోట్స్ పుల్ తీసుకోవాలి నువ్వు. So those who do not have any single file also, this is for them. I'm not going to repeat this again. So you'll have to note down the points if you want. అవసరం లేదు, న్యూ ప్రాజెక్ట్ వద్దు తల్లి. Open your IntelliJ and click on get from VCS. Okay. Oh, నాయన GitHub కూడా సెటప్ చేసుకోలేదా? Okay. Click on get from VCS. At the left hand side, you should see GitHub. At the left hand side, you should see GitHub. And if you click on GitHub, if you are getting login via GitHub, login. Otherwise, hold on, no problem. Authorize. Usually it will ask you for username and password. Since this is not asking, not needed, you can click on authorize. Type your password. Okay. Right. Done. You have been successfully authorized. Now go back to your IntelliJ. Ali, companies ID. Oh, appo. మెల్లగా ఉసుకున మళ్ళీ ఏమన్నా పోగల మళ్ళీ. So if you already have logged in, you should get something like this. If you have not logged in, I've already shown you how to log in. Log in, and after logging in, just under GitHub, you should see your username at the left hand side. That's the indication that you have logged in. Just under GitHub, you should see your username. Here, Kavya's name is visible under GitHub. So, and after you log in, you should see the project. You have accepted my invite. If you have accepted my invite, you should get the project name, project details here. Okay. I hope everyone is doing this. This is for all of those people who have asked me today in the session. Okay. I'm not going to repeat this again and again. So you'll have to note this down, and then, you should not be getting any problem tomorrow again. Okay. So GitHub and login. If you did not log in, what is the indication that you have logged in? Your username under GitHub. If you can see your username under GitHub, it means that you have logged in. And what is the indication that you have accepted my project request? You should see the project details here. If you have not accepted my project request, if you have not accepted my invitation, that will not be visible here. You cannot see those project details here. So since Kavya has accepted my invitation, she can see the project details here. So you'll have to select the project and you can say clone. Clone. Hold on. Let it complete. That's it. You got all the notes. Okay. Chalo guys. Let's meet again tomorrow. Bye. From tomorrow onwards, those who have downloaded the files, from tomorrow onwards, you need not do all of this stuff. From tomorrow onwards, just do pull. You'll get the required files. need not do all the entire process. Clone is only done at the first time in the beginning. From the rest of the times, you can just do pull. బాబు పుల్ తీసుకోమని చెప్పి నేను గంట నుంచి అరుస్తున్నాను నేను నీకు. నువ్వు పుల్ తీసుకోకపోతే నేనేం చేయలేను. ఏపీఐ ఫైల్ ఈజ్ నాట్ కమ్ అంటే ఇది ఏమవుతుంది అనేది నువ్వు నాకు స్క్రీన్ షాట్ పెట్టాలి. నువ్వు నా స్క్రీన్ షాట్ పెట్టకపోతే నేనేం హెల్ప్ చేయలేను నీకు. నీ సిస్టంలో ఏం జరుగుతుందని చెప్పి నేను ఊహించుకుంటా చెప్పు. నేను ఎలా ఊహించుకుంటాను నీ సిస్టంలో ఏం జరుగుతుందని చెప్పి అని. ఊహల్లో నేను వీక్. నాకు స్క్రీన్ షాట్ పంపిస్తే గానీ నేనేం చేయలేను నీ మెషిన్ లో. ఐ కాంట్ డూ ఎనీథింగ్ అన్లెస్ యూ సెండ్ మీ అ స్క్రీన్ షాట్. బ్రదర్ నీ ప్రాబ్లం ఏంది, ఇంకా రాలేదా? ఫుల్ ఎందుకు వస్తుంది బ్రదర్? ఇప్పుడు చెప్పినా కదా నీకు నేను ఇదంతా. ఇప్పుడు అంతా నేను చెప్పింది నీకు కూడా ప్రాసెస్ నిన్ను కూడా చేయమని చెప్పినా కదా, నేను చేయలేదా ఇప్పుడు నేను చెప్పిందంతా? బాబు నువ్వు పుల్ తీసుకోకుండా ఎందుకు అరుస్తున్నావు నువ్వు? గుప్తా పుల్ తీసుకోవాలి కదా, పుల్ తీసుకోమని చెప్పినాను. పుల్ తీసుకోకుండా రావట్లేదంటే ఎట్లా వస్తుంది నీకు? పుల్ తీసుకోమని చెప్పినా కదా నీకు, పుల్ తీసుకో. పుల్ తీసుకోకపోతే ఎట్లా వస్తుంది? రాదు. పుల్ క్లిక్ చేయాలి. నువ్వు రోజు ఎట్లా పుల్ తీసుకుంటున్నావు అట్లా పుల్ తీసుకో నీ మెషిన్ లో. నీకు ఐడియా ఉంది కదా పుల్ ఎట్లా తీసుకోవాలనేది. పుల్ తీసుకోవాలి. పుల్ తీసుకోకపోతే రాదు. నో యూ విల్ నాట్ గెట్ ఎనీథింగ్ అన్లెస్ యూ టేక్ పుల్. గుప్తా కొత్త పుల్ తీసుకోవట్లేదు ఆ రోజు. నువ్వు ఎట్లా వస్తున్నాయి మరి ఇక్కడ స్క్రీన్ షాట్ లో ఫైల్స్ ఎట్లా కనిపిస్తున్నాయి నాకు నీవి? నీకు కొత్తనా? ఫైల్స్ ఎట్లా కనిపిస్తున్నాయి నాకు ఇక్కడ మరి? I can see all the files, SQL file also. How did you get all these files if you are not taking any pull? ఎట్లా వస్తున్నాయి నాకు అసలు చెప్పు. ఈ ఫైల్స్ ఎట్లా వచ్చినాయి అసలు నీకు? ఈ ఫైల్స్ అన్ని చెప్పు. నువ్వు సెషన్ స్టార్టింగ్ నుంచి మొత్తుకుంటున్నావు రావట్లేదు రావట్లేదు అని చెప్పి అని. నేను అంతే ఇంటెన్సిటీతో మొత్తుకుంటున్నా పుల్ తీసుకో అని చెప్పి అని. ఈ 4 ఫైల్స్ నీకు ఎట్లా వచ్చినాయి? ఈ ఒక్క ఫైల్ ఎందుకు రావట్లేదు? నాకు అది కావాలి. నాకు ఇప్పుడు బేసిక్ గా అది చెప్తే కానీ నీకు ఆన్సర్ చెప్పను నేను. ఫైల్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ ఎందుకు చేస్తున్నావు? నేను ఫైల్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ ఎవరు చేయమన్నారు అసలు? ఫైల్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్షన్ అవసరమే ఉంది అసలు? ఐ డోంట్ అండర్స్టాండ్ వై యు ఆర్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్టింగ్ ది ఫైల్. వై ఆర్ యూ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్టింగ్ ది ఫైల్? వెన్ డిడ్ ఐ ఆస్క్ యూ టు ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ ది ఫైల్? అదేంటో నాకు అర్థం కాదు గుప్తా. నువ్వు టోటల్ నాన్ సింక్ లో ఉంటావు మిగతా వాళ్ళతో కంపేర్ చేస్తే. అది నాకు అర్థం కాదు మరి. ఐ డోంట్ రియలీ అండర్స్టాండ్ వై యు ఆర్ కంప్లీట్లీ అవుట్ ఆఫ్ సింక్. అర్థం అవుతుంది అంటావు, నాన్ సింక్ లో ఉంటావు. నాకు అర్థం కావట్లేదు అది ఏంటి ప్రాబ్లం అని చెప్పి అనేది. ప్రాబ్లం ఉంటే చెప్పు, ఏమన్నా ఉంటే. బెటర్ అటెండ్ ఆఫ్లైన్ క్లాసెస్ సో దట్ యూ విల్ హ్యావ్ ఫ్యాకల్టీ హెల్పింగ్ యూ అవుట్ దేర్. నువ్వు టైం వేస్ట్ చేసుకుంటున్నావు. నువ్వు ఇక్కడ ఆల్మోస్ట్ 1 month అయిపోయింది. పుల్ గురించి చెప్పి కూడా 15 days అయిపోయింది. పుల్ గురించి చెప్పి కూడా రఫ్ గా. If you're still not able to do it, you're not following what I'm telling you. Maybe you don't understand my English. Maybe you're not able to handle this amount of stuff. I can understand that. నేను కాదనట్లేదు. బెటర్ చూజ్ ఆఫ్లైన్ అని చెప్పి అంటున్నాను నీకు నేను. ఎందుకంటే ఎవ్రీ డే యూఆర్ అవుట్ ఆఫ్ సింక్. I'm not saying that is wrong. I'm saying that you need to put more efforts by sitting in the class. ఆన్లైన్ కుదరదేమో నీకు అంటున్నా నేను. ఐఎమ్ అండర్స్టాండింగ్ సార్ అంటున్నావు. మరి పుల్ ఎందుకు తీసుకోవట్లేదు చెప్పు నువ్వు నాకు. వై ఆర్ యూ నాట్ టేకింగ్ ది పుల్? మరి పుల్ తీసుకుంటే 4 ఫైల్స్ వచ్చి ఒక్క ఫైల్ ఎందుకు రావట్లేదు? వాట్ ఈస్ దట్ స్క్రీన్ షాట్ దట్ యూఆర్ నాట్ షేరింగ్ విత్ మీ? యూఆర్ నాట్ షేరింగ్ ది ఎంటైర్ డీటెయిల్స్ విత్ మీ. డాక్టర్ దగ్గర, లాయర్ దగ్గర, నా దగ్గర దాచిపెడితే ఏం రాదు. ఏదున్నా కరెక్ట్ గా చెప్పు ఏం రావట్లేదు అనేది. నీకు ఏం రావట్లేదో కరెక్ట్ గా చెప్తే నేను అది నీకు హెల్ప్ చేస్తా. డు నాట్ లైవ్ విత్ ఎ డాక్టర్, డు నాట్ లైవ్ విత్ యువర్ లాయర్, డు నాట్ లైవ్ విత్ మీ. బ్రదర్ ప్రాబ్లం ఏముంది? మాన్యువల్ టెస్టింగ్ ఫోల్డర్ ఎక్స్పాండ్ చేస్తే అయిపోతుంది కదా. అయిపోయింది, మీకు వచ్చేసింది. ఇంకేంది? గుప్తా ఏపీఐ ఫైల్ నాట్ గెట్టింగ్ అంటే అది కరెక్ట్ ఆన్సర్ కాదు. నువ్వు ఏం చేసావు, నీకు ఎందుకు రాలేదు అనేది నేను అడుగుతున్నాను నేను. వాట్ డిడ్ యూ డూ, వై డిడ్ యూ నాట్ గెట్? దట్ ఈస్ వాట్ ఐఎమ్ ఆస్కింగ్ యూ. అది చెప్పు నువ్వు నాకు. రావట్లేదు అనేది ఇక్కడ చూస్తే నాకు కూడా అర్థమైంది. అది నేను కాదనట్లేదు. I can understand that you are not getting it. What did you do differently that you got these 4 files, but you are not getting that 5th file? That is what I am interested in knowing. What did you do in these 4 files differently that you got these 4 files? Why are you not getting the 5th file? అది నేను అడుగుతున్నా. ఒక్కసారి అర్థం చేసుకో నా క్వశ్చన్ ఏంటి అనేది. నువ్వు ఈ 4 ఫైల్స్ లో నువ్వు వింతగా విచిత్రంగా చేసింది ఏంటి? SQL లో నీకు ఏ లైన్ వరకు కనిపిస్తుంది చెప్పు. SQL లో వాట్ ఈస్ ది లాస్ట్ లైన్ దట్ యు ఆర్ సీయింగ్ ఇన్ యువర్ SQL ఫైల్? చెప్పు అది నాకు. SQL ఫైల్లో లాస్ట్ లైన్ ఏం కనిపిస్తుంది నీకు? అది చెప్పు నువ్వు నాకు ఫస్ట్. బ్రదర్ లేట్ అవుతుంది. ఇట్స్ ఆల్రెడీ 10:35. ఐ నీడ్ టు గో అండ్ హ్యావ్ మై డిన్నర్. ఫాస్ట్ గా చెప్పు. ఇన్ యువర్ SQL ఫైల్, వాట్ ఈస్ ది లాస్ట్ లైన్ దట్ యు ఆర్ ఏబుల్ టు సీ? ఫుల్ క్లిక్ చేయి బ్రదర్, ఫుల్ క్లిక్ చేయి, ఫుల్ క్లిక్ చేయి. గుప్తా, ఓన్లీ 86 లైన్స్ వస్తున్నాయి అన్నావు. వెరీ గుడ్. నువ్వు అసలు లాస్ట్ 3-4 రోజుల నుంచి క్లాస్ లో ఏం చేస్తున్నావు నాకు అది చెప్పు అసలు ఫస్ట్. పుల్ తీసుకున్నావా అంటే పుల్ తీసుకున్నా అంటావు, వచ్చినాయా అంటే వచ్చినాయి అన్నావు. మరి నువ్వు అసలు లాస్ట్ 3-4 డేస్ అసలు నువ్వు క్లాస్ లో ఏం చేసావు అది నాకు చెప్పు అసలు. నేను నిన్ను బ్లేమ్ చేయట్లే, నేను నిన్ను తిట్టట్లే, నేను నిన్ను సింపుల్ గా క్వశ్చన్ అడుగుతున్నాను. నేను నీకు రాకపోతే రావట్లేదు అని చెప్పి చెప్పడానికి ప్రాబ్లం ఏంటి? నువ్వు ఇంత లేట్ గా చెప్పకూడదు కదా, అవునా? అసలు 86 లైన్స్ వరకు కూడా నీకు ఎట్లా వచ్చాయి? నాది అదే డౌట్ అసలు. హౌ ఆర్ యూ ఏబుల్ టు రీచ్ టిల్ 86 లైన్స్? దట్ ఈస్ వాట్ మై క్వశ్చన్ ఇస్. ఇట్లా ఉంటే చాలా కష్టం గుప్తా, చాలా కష్టం ఇట్లా ఉంటే. అర్థమవుతుందా? నువ్వు చాలా ఫాస్ట్ గా పికప్ అవ్వాలి. జావాకి వచ్చే టైంకి ఎగ్జాక్ట్ చేస్తే వచ్చాయి. ఏం ఎగ్జాక్ట్ చేసావు నాకు అర్థం కావట్లేదు. నువ్వు ఏమంటున్నావు అనేది. ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ అంటున్నావు, EXTACT. ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ అంటే ఏం ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ నాకు అర్థం కావట్లేదు. ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ అంటే రోజు పుల్ ఎట్లా తీసుకుంటున్నావు అట్లాగే తీసుకో బ్రదర్. ఫైల్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ ఎందుకు బ్రదర్? నువ్వు ఫైల్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ ఎందుకు చేస్తున్నావు? వెన్ డిడ్ ఐ ఆస్క్ యూ టు డూ ఫైల్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్? నేను ఫైల్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ అసలు చెప్పలేదు ఎవరికి. నేను అసలు ఈ 4 ఎలా వచ్చాయి అసలు చెప్పు నువ్వు నాకు. ఇవాళ రాత్రి 10 అయితే 11 అయినా 12 అయినా ఉందాం. అసలు ఈ 4 ఫైల్స్ ఎలా వచ్చాయో ఆ ప్రొసీజర్ నువ్వు నాకు చెప్పు. నువ్వు కరెక్ట్ చేసావా రాంగ్ చేసావా అనేది నేను చెప్తాను నీకు. అది చెప్పు నువ్వు ఫస్ట్ నాకు. హౌ డిడ్ యూ గెట్ దీస్ 4 ఫైల్స్? అది ఫైల్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ చేశాడంటావు మళ్ళీ. సరే ఎక్కడి నుంచి ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ చేసావు ఆ ఫైల్ అది చెప్పు నాకు. ఎక్కడి నుంచి ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ చేసావు ఫైల్ నాకు చెప్పు నువ్వు నాకు. ఫ్రమ్ వేర్ డిడ్ యూ గెట్ దట్ ఫైల్ సో దట్ యూ హ్యావ్ ఎక్స్ట్రాక్టెడ్ ఇట్? ఎక్కడి నుంచి ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ చేసావు అది చెప్పు. అది నాకు బాగా ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఇప్పుడు. ఫాస్ట్ గుప్తా. API నోట్స్ ఎక్కడ ఉంది ఒకసారి చూడు బ్రదర్. ఆ 5 ఫైల్స్ లోనే ఉంటుంది, చదువు ఒకసారి కనిపిస్తుంది. గుప్తా, గుప్తా ఏం ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ చేసావు, ఎక్కడి నుంచి ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ చేసావు? స్క్రీన్ షాట్ పెట్టు. గుప్తా, why did you use this? ఇది ఎవరు యూజ్ చేయమన్నారు? హూ గేవ్ యూ దిస్ ఫైల్? ఇది ఎవరిచ్చారు అసలు ఈ ఫైల్ నీకు? హూ గేవ్ యూ దిస్ జిప్ ఫైల్? టెల్ మీ. ఆ క్యాండిడేట్ ని నిన్ను ఇద్దరికి క్లాస్ విక్తా చెప్పు అసలు ఎవరిచ్చిన ఆ ఫైల్ నీకు? ఐ రియలీ వాంట్ టు నో హూ దట్ క్యాండిడేట్ ఈస్ హూ హాస్ గివెన్ యూ దిస్ జిప్ ఫైల్. ఎవరా క్యాండిడేట్ నీకు జిప్ ఫైల్ ఇచ్చింది? ఒకసారి నాతో మాట్లాడమని చెప్పు. ఎవరిచ్చారు నీకు జిప్ ఫైల్? ఎవరు చెప్పారు ఇది ప్రాసెస్ అని చెప్పాను నీకు? అయితే నువ్వు రోజు క్లాస్ లో ఫాలో అవుతుంది ఏంటి మరి? పుల్ తీసుకోవాలని చెప్తున్నప్పుడు పుల్ వచ్చింది అని ఎట్లా చెప్తున్నావు రోజు నువ్వు క్లాస్ లో మరి? హౌ డిడ్ యూ గెట్ దిస్ జిప్ ఫైల్? అది నాకు కావాలి ఇప్పుడు బేసిక్ గా. నువ్వు ఏం చేస్తే నీకు జిప్ ఫైల్ వచ్చిందో చెప్పు నాకు అసలు ఫస్ట్. ఒక పని చేయి, నాకు ఒక సింపుల్ క్వశ్చన్ ఆన్సర్ చేయి. నువ్వు ఒక సింపుల్ క్వశ్చన్ ఆన్సర్ చేయి. ఓకే, ఒక సింపుల్ క్వశ్చన్ ఆన్సర్ చేయి నాకు.